Hello and welcome to Startups in Spotlight by Horses Stable News. With the focus on the latest updates from the international startup ecosystem, we bring to you to the minute news coverage of startup funding, investors' opinions, innovation, as well as upcoming global entrepreneurial events. This is Prashant Agarwal and I'm the host for the day. Today we have with us Mr. Omar Farooqui. Omar is a founder and president of Coded Minds, a Dubai-based Series A stage education technology startup with a focus on integrated STEM education. Welcome to HS News, Mr. Farooqui. It's great to have you on the show.
Good afternoon now, and pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Great. So my first question to you, Omar, is you have spent more than 2 decades of your career in finance sector, what I believe. What incidences marked your entry into the education sector? And as of now, what I could see that education sector is booming up throughout the globe. What
Yes.
would be your views on it?
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me once more. So basically, the journey to Coded Minds is twofold. My life as a child, I was a terrible student. I used to struggle, to do exams, and I used to, my parents used to just go crazy, wanting me to get all these great grades, and I couldn't get those grades. I was a very average student, just skipping by every grade, you know. But for some reason, everyone, my close friends would always say that, you do everything so right in the normal time, but when it comes to exams, you just mess up. And then, if you fast forward 20 years later, my son went through the same exact thing, that I went through. And I'm thinking that, okay, 2 decades later, people have gone to Mars, and they're discovering all sorts of planets, but the education remains exactly the same. And then, and on top of that, my career, in fact, the last 5 years of my finance career was quite focused on the education sector. And I looked at a lot of M&As. I looked at a lot of good, traditional schooling systems around the world. In different parts of the world, in the subcontinent, in the Far East, in Singapore specifically, of course, in the Gulf, we live here. So it really gave me an incredible idea of how the cash flow and how the finances of a schooling system work. And then it made me realize that, guess what? 70% of the cost of the traditional schooling system goes towards real estate. It doesn't actually go towards the learning. So that means the standards of learning will never improve as much as they should. It should go 100% towards the education system, not only 30%, correct? And so that made me quite understand. So it made me, from a business sense, prepared. Obviously, from an emotional perspective, as I mentioned to you, for myself and my son, something needs to change. Then just doing a bit of research and talking to quite a few sort of education experts and all the same, over 1 billion students, or 1 billion children, I should not even students, 1 billion children around the world don't even get basic education. Forget about, high tech quality private education. I'm talking just basic education they don't even get. And the main reason is that they can't get to it. And second of all, affordability. So two things, basically, because obviously in these developing markets, digital infrastructure is also not very developed. So it is not available to masses around the world.
Exactly.
And so all of these made this journey where we are today. Obviously, it's been over 3 years now. In fact, it'll be 4 years in a few more months. Where we are and what drives us basically to achieve and really push boundaries from not just technological perspective, but also from price point and affordability perspective. A lot of these major, billion-dollar unicorns around the world who are doing wonderful things, but they're still only tackling the top 10% of the issues of the world. They're not tackling the mass population issues of the world, which are the real issues, right? And that is what we want to do. We know there's a problem. And I'm not saying that I have the cure or I know the solution, but what I'm saying is that let us start. And so we're starting that journey. That's why I call it more of a movement, of what we're trying to do. And it is a movement, but it is a commercial movement. So I'm saying it very clearly. We're not an NGO, right? Because I believe sustainability is a big thing, right? If you can sustain yourself, and that is by being socially responsible from a commercial perspective, you will achieve great things. right? Which a lot of people are not, because remember when I did my involved in the finance world of these M&As, of these education, the kind of margins that those people produced were incredible, right? So there's a massive room for all of us to benefit, but at the same time benefit the masses.
I hope you were not a backbencher at your times, and so as your kid.
Not at all. Well, yeah, exactly right. In fact, I was second row from the back.
I could predict that. But nevertheless, before moving on to the next question, I was very curious why coded minds? Why the
Yeah,
name the coded minds has come
yeah.
up?
It's a very interesting question, and we debate this. I debate this as well all the time. I was sitting in the licensing of one of the regulators out here in Dubai when we first started off, and I was having a discussion with one of the the ministers, and they
Right.
said to me, "What are you going to name this venture?" And I literally on the spot thought of a few names myself, and in fact, it was on a tissue roll that I scrambled a few down, and I still have that tissue roll to this day. I wrote down four names, and Coded Minds was one of the names, and I said, look, one of the things that we are trying to change in this world, our mentality, is the
Right.
mind of parents. Students are ready. All the children are already ready. They grow up with iPads and iPhones and phones and cell. It's the parents who are at a certain generation are old school, thinking the way old school traditions are supposed to be. They're already pre-coded in those old ways. So coded minds came about that, okay, I'm going to, that's a good analogy for it.
That's I would say, a nice way or an intriguing way to come up with a name with. But nevertheless, like coded minds also offer a number of education programs for both students and teachers. Can you
Correct.
share a brief impact these initiatives have created on the industry as well as on the individual lives of the people?
Correct. Absolutely. So look, we are when we our genesis as a company was a lot on tech subjects, and I'm talking
Right.
about tech subjects that are relevant to 21st century. We were computer science related, coding related,
Yes.
robotics related, all these sort of high tech programmable concepts related, where the future is all going to change, right? Artificial intelligence, etc., is going
Very
to take over a majority of the jobs, all that. And that's why it is important for the skills of tomorrow to be taught today, which are not taught in I would say 70% of the schools around the world don't teach at the level that they should be taught these subjects, number one, right? So obviously the students are not taught, but they're not taught because the teachers don't know it. The teachers themselves, it's a massive crisis around the world. Teachers are not ready to teach the subjects of the future. For example, even generally speaking, teaching in a physical classroom is very different to teaching online. It is two different skills altogether, right? That's
agreed.
number one. And number two, the actual subject content, subject matter. If you teach by project based, a methodology, which is what we learn, well, it's project and challenge based, basically, where children do projects. They don't do theoretical things. What are you going to do with theories, right? You have to learn skills, practical vocational skills that should be mainstream, right? They should not be an after school activity or an addition. No, it needs to be the main subject. Think about it. If you have, I'm sure, have done mathematics and all these science, physics, chemistry, biology at school level, learning all these theoretical things. What do you do in the real world in a daily life with those things? You don't use them, right? What you need is actually practicality of 21st century technological skills, which is combined with these mainstream subjects in a project environment that will prepare the children for the next level,
In
as
fact, I
well as
was just coming to this question like, how is coded mind different in the aspect of theoretical aspects and practical aspects? I believe you have answered me that. Uh,
well, I'll just quickly elaborate on it as well. Again, as a child, over 30 years ago, that's why I struggled, because it was all about memorization, right? Memorization of theory or theoretical concepts, which once you take the exam, you forget, right? So then why are you doing it in the first place, right? And you do it for 10 years or 12 years, prepare for college, and which teaches something completely different, prepare for the real life, which does completely different. So then what's the point of this massive journey and the parents being in such harsh times of paying fees all the time or tuition fees all the time and struggling and getting. So all of that was why we did what we did, that to challenge the norm we had to move away, completely away from theoretical aspects. So we didn't even do 50% theory or 50% project. We do 100% practicality, 100% projects, which is why children come back to us. They enjoy it. They actually real world, real life projects that they come back to us and learn.
That's fantastic, I would say. I'm sure through this way, you would have definitely a maximum retention on the clients as well. When I mention clients as students, you would definitely be able to capture them.
Well,
So,
students are our they're the spokesperson for us. They tell the parents like, look, we're having too much fun, so they come back.
that's fantastic. I hope that Coded Minds would be giving them free leeways as well in the
Totally,
practical aspects.
totally,
Great.
totally.
Last year, as per as our research is concerned, last year I believe that Coded Minds acquired two startups, Edge
Correct.
Makers and STEM Learning Lab. Could
Yes.
you just share a couple of experience and how are you integrating these products in the current platform?
It was very important that, if you will call it acquisition, in the life of Coded Mind. In fact, they were edge makers and STEM Learning Lab were not a, they were older than Coded Minds. They were not a startup. They were a very established enterprise, well set in Canada, in the western part of Canada and the western part of the US.
Okay.
And in fact, they were doing some very excellent, advanced 21st century adult education as
Mhm.
well as to child education. And so for me, it was a great fit to add that to the portfolio of Coded Minds. So I, was introduced to the founders who were wonderful, wonderful people. I met them multiple times, and I think we had just an instantly great connection. And so I did the acquisition because it just made sense to where we were going. Instead of reinventing the wheel, well, this was something that exactly what I wanted to get to. So if I can marry the platform of Coded Minds, the expansion of Coded Minds with something like this, the content that is produced by edge makers, then it's a perfect fit. And so last year, in the summer of last year, we finished the acquisition of edge makers STEM Learning Lab, and that was a massive thing for us because it quantum leaped us forward in terms of content. And that content today we use all throughout the world. In fact, we have tweaked it further by making that content not just in English but available in Arabic, available in the subcontinent, in the local languages as well. And we continue to do that. We want to do it in Malaysia as well, in Indonesia, and you name it.
That's nice. I am much more excited to know how would Coded Minds be integrated with AR and VR. It's just out of box question, but I would definitely love to hear that.
Yes, absolutely. Look, augmented reality, virtual reality, going forward in the future. I mean, I think gone on record and said this many times. I think it'll become just a complete norm. You know, those will be experienced based. I mean, forget about education. I'm talking about vacations. I'm talking about doing all sorts of things. I mean, people will do augmented reality, tours and stuff, and the physicality aspect. I mean, we're in this coronavirus times that we live in, where we're at home or in lockdown. I mean, it's even more so being left forward. So we did it in two ways, or we're doing it in two ways. One is we actually teach it as a subject matter to children who actually produce their own AR VR games, but related to reality. They produce those games related to reality, and the skill that is needed to do that, because look, in the future is going to be completely normal. So it is these skills that are going to be used to prepare those things, right? To prepare those augmented libraries and of visions. So that is why we are doing what we are doing, and that is why it is being taught in our, as one or two of the subject matters at the same time.
I'm all excited to be a part of Coded Games as a client myself. I am sure that there would be something for startup founders coming up soon.
Yes, it is. Again, as I said to you, that even for the adults at the adult level, they have to teach the children. So they need to learn those skills, and we completely agree that we are actually starting to offer those.
Sure. So, according to you, what has been the most crucial point or turning points for Coded Mind so far? Like, if you could mention me some key milestones or probably your biggest competitors, or how do you differentiate yourself from them?
Well, we have two, three major milestones in our, 3.5 year life.
Hmm.
Obviously, one milestone, was the when I was the only founding shareholder of Coded Mind. So I didn't have any other partners or any other founders or shareholders. It was myself, very much like you, like I said, bootstrapped it for the first 2 years, right? So the first milestone for me was when an outside party, an outside investor, and a large investor invests in your company, then it is like what you're doing is right. You're on the right path, right? Not just from a financial perspective, but also from a strategy perspective of what we were doing. So the milestone number one was when Al Arabi Investments invested a Series A in us, and it was a bigger than a Series A. If I'm honest with you, it was almost like a Series A and a B combined together in terms of the amount, right? So they were very much with it, and today they are obviously so happy with us as well as a,
I
not
believe
just as a
that
financial
was close
investor.
to 10 million or so, if I'm not.
Correct. Correct, correct.
That's
Yes, absolutely. And not just that. I mean, they were actually one of the large. They were one of the bigger media houses. In fact, in about they will be the second biggest media house in the world. Which they will, in the next couple of months from now. So even from a strategic perspective, it was very important for us, to have them as an investor. So that was a one big milestone for us. So and they continue to be that. The second one was obviously the EdgeMakers acquisition, very very important acquisition because it's every time it's from the west that they come and acquire in the east. So this time it was kind of the reverse, and I think we did a bit of research on this, and I don't think that's also ever been really done. That from a firm from this part of the world acquires one from that part of the world. And why that was a good milestone was not just because of the content, but because of the other shareholders that we now have as a result of it. Because we have some of the who's who of the shareholding, the institutional world. So, for example, we have Fidelity, who are a very well-known global name, U.S. money manager, number one. We also have Avalon Ventures, who are a 35-year-old VC out of Silicon Valley. They're also a shareholder now on top of the Al Arabi investment. So we are very heavily institutionalized as a company, right? So that was the second milestone. The third milestone is actually during COVID lockdown, when we launched our own, the tech platform, our
right.
own virtual campus, if you want to call it, platform. And that quantum leaped us forward because the disruption of COVID didn't impact us as badly as it impacted the others. I mean, there were businesses who stopped. We didn't stop. We switched over to 100% online learning from physical as well. So we are a pure blended platform now, and so these three are very big milestones for us.
That's fantastic. I'm super amazed to hear, and I'm sure that you must be having your share of struggles as well, because you have achieved so much in such a short time span. What are key challenges you have faced across, and how did you overcome them?
Good question. I mean, you're an entrepreneur. You've done 4 businesses and all yourself as well, so you will know the pain of an entrepreneur. I think
I do
we
very well understand.
Yes, our psychology is such that I think we first of all we think that we know what is right, and so everything has to be done in a specific way. I think what I have learned as well is to learn to listen to a lot of people as well, and I want to listen to people and to build a very good team around you. Eventually everything is a people's business, right? And even if you have the greatest product, if your people are not right, it doesn't matter what happens, how good your product is. So the people need to be, first of all, you guys need, you need to be on the same page. Second of all, you have to be, willing, they need to be willing to sacrifice for you, and you need to sacrifice for them. And all these things are so important from a psychological perspective. Number one, so building a team is very important. Second of all, a battle perhaps specifically for education, is the parental battle. I mentioned earlier about the minds of parents. parents obviously every parent, I'm a parent myself, we all think we know the best for the child, right? For our child, you think you know the best, right? You may know the best in a lot of things, but you don't know the best in everything, especially education, right? And so we want to involve all the stakeholders in the journey of a child, during their education years. What are the stakeholders? Stakeholders are teachers, massive stakeholders. I think this children spend more time with the teacher than they do with parents in that journey, right?
Very
So
true.
uh, so involving teachers, we empower teachers. That's why teachers come to us. We don't sort of give them, here you go, follow the rules and that's it. No, we actually, they help us invent and write curriculum, and then they teach it as well. So if they're so passionate about writing it, they would be passionate about teaching it, right? So that is also very important, which I think 90% of the education institutes around the world don't do that. They still follow the tradition. Yes, they do all sorts of new wonderful things, but when it comes to teachers, it's still the same, right? So
Yes.
these are very, very important things for to kind of to change the way education is delivered to the child. It's not just about technology, but it's also about the teachers. If you get the teacher wrong, the human aspect of it wrong, then what's the point of having the technology?
Agreed. Also, Omar, I believe it must be challenging to work across such a diverse target audience
Yeah,
across different regions. Although
correct,
now, like your presence have been in 6 different regions.
correct.
What kind of research has Coded Mind teams undertaken to understand and implement the expansion plans?
Yeah, it's a very good question again. Um, in the world of coded minds, we are about 55, 56 nationalities, right? Uh, of course, in terms of student body. In terms of geographical footprint, yes, we are in 6 countries, but if you include India and Malaysia soon, India and Brazil soon, we will be in 8 geographical footprints. Already the ethnicity, the culture, the traditions is very different. The upbringing of every single society is very different. So you can't have one size fits all, right? Which is what education system, traditional education tries to do. It's like a one size fit all, which is not the case. Education needs to be as tailor made, as individualized as possible. So what we have done is our research has shown, and as we have grown, is that look, as we invent, as we create our content, our curriculum, right? Yes, about 60%, 70% of the curriculum is very similar, which is offered worldwide, but 30% is tailored according to the local norms and customs and traditions and languages, which is super, super important aspect of it, which is why it is transportable and relatable in every country we expand, and that's why we have expanded quickly. I don't. It's almost like, you know, uh, uh, India or UAE or Saudi Arabia or Canada or US. They're all autonomously working themselves. So there's no sort of one. Here's the rule book. Please go implement it. No, not at all. They do it themselves according to the local norms. Everything we do is according to localized.
Nice. So we all understand the effectiveness of integrated STEM education brings to education curriculum. But still, we haven't seen much adoption of this concept in the school curriculum, specifically in the Asian developing countries like India themselves. I believe your next target is India on the scale of growth. Do you
Correct.
believe integrated STEM education can become mainstream in such countries in near future?
Well, it has to become mainstream. The way we are, India, is a very strong cultural, multicultural, society, right? It's multicultural society, and it's a very strong, society of hundreds and hundreds of years old, right?
Right.
So you can't expect them to change overnight, right? It is about convincing, experimenting, convincing a journey that a parent, a school system, an educator themselves have to go through, see for themselves the difference that it makes, right?
Right.
We did an experiment in an Indian school here in the UAE. We taught mathematics, to fifth graders here in the UAE.
Okay.
And, the children, the concepts that they learned in that trial 1 month phase versus what they were learning from their traditional teacher, right? I mean, they didn't want to go back to the old class again, right? It was because they picked up more in the 1 month than they had picked up in about 5 months, right?
Right.
And that was only because of the way we teach, which is project-based STEM integration of a subject matter, right? Not traditional through textbooks and theoretical aspects. And that is what we're trying to say. We don't want to, you see, we don't want to replace anyone, right? I completely understand that if at the moment it's still about taking an exam at the board level and passing a test, it's still about that, right? That is a longer journey. So no problem. But what we do is we prepare for that exam in a completely different way, right?
Right.
So we don't want to replace anyone. We're always saying is adapt our way, right? Watch the students thrive themselves, and be more prepared, not just for the exam, but for the future.
Interesting. That's really interesting, Omar. Before we could conclude the enlightening conversation, uh, please tell us a bit more about Coded Minds with regards to the work culture. How's your everyday been like, and how have been like your team working during the COVID times or the tough times? So would be love to know
Yeah,
those.
absolutely. Look, I've always been of the belief that traditional work was anyway outdated, right? So sitting
Right.
in an office, coming 9 to 5, I think that was always outdated. When COVID happened, it gave us an opportunity to really decouple or go away from the real estate aspect of it, the office aspect of it. Right?
Right.
Yes, you need an office space for, in a lot of the countries, office space is linked to having a license for being a business, right?
True.
Which is fine. Again, it's a longer term journey for that. So we have physical office space, but do we need to physically be there, or do we need to be at a 9 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning and check out at 6 o'clock? No, we don't. We don't need to do that at all. So our culture around the world, I have said in fact, everyone is back from lockdowns and going back to work. I've actually said to them, there's no need anymore to come. If you don't want to come to the office, you can work from home. If you want to come to the office, by all means, the office is there for you to come to work. So I've given a very flexible thing. I myself am home. Even though, I do take meetings outside, but I'm from home. And what COVID has made us realize that it works. Look at the call we are having, right? It's a virtual call from it's a global call. How is that possible in physical world? It's not.
Exactly. That was a great session. We had definitely great insights. I'm sure viewers must be amazed to learn more about Coded Minds, and you should get definitely good hits on your site as well.
I hope so.
So,
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.